Welcome to Lord of Limbo, where the unknown finds its voice. Today, we bring you true accounts that challenge logic and push the limits of fear. Stories from ordinary people who have lived through terrifying and unexplainable experiences. Whether at work, at home, on the road, or just out for a stroll, the unexpected can strike when you least expect it. Get ready to dive into another chilling episode. And remember, not everything can be explained. My name is Alex. It was a cold Thursday night in early December when this strange experience happened. I had just finished a long workday, and my friends and I decided to go to a local bar. Nothing fancy, just a dimly lit place with wood-paneled walls, an old jukebox in the corner, and a few mismatched tables scattered around. The kind of place where everyone knows each other, and there's always someone sitting alone, nursing a drink, watching the crowd. We walked in and found a corner booth by the windows. The bar wasn't busy, just a few regulars scattered around. I remember the faint smell of stale beer and fried food that hung in the air. The usual hum of quiet chatter and clinking glasses surrounded us, but there was something about the place that night, something off. Maybe it was the cold air creeping in through the cracked door or the way the shadows seemed to linger a little longer than usual. We started with a round of beers. It was my friend Matt who first mentioned it. He had this odd look on his face, like he was lost in thought. "You guys ever notice that old man who sits at the bar?" Matt asked, glancing over his shoulder. I had seen the man. He was a regular, gray hair, worn-out leather jacket, and always sitting at the same spot, alone. But I hadn't really paid him much attention before. He seemed harmless enough, just another local fixture. "Yeah, what about him?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "I don't know, he's always staring at people, like he's waiting for something," Matt said, his voice low. "You know the vibe. Like he's not really there, but also, watching." We all chuckled a little, brushing it off. It was just a weird feeling we were getting, nothing more. We continued talking, but I couldn't help but glance over at the old man every now and then. He wasn't looking at us, but there was something unsettling about his stillness, about the way he always seemed to be observing. His eyes were fixed ahead, yet they didn't seem to focus on anything in particular. As the night went on, the bar began to fill up a little more. A few new faces came in, chatting and laughing, blending into the hum of noise. But the old man remained where he was. His eyes never moved, and he hadn't spoken a word to anyone. I started to feel uneasy, but I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. Then it happened. I had stepped out to use the restroom. The narrow hallway that led to the back of the bar was dimly lit, with flickering fluorescent lights above. As I passed the bathroom door and walked toward the back exit, I heard something faint, like a rustle. Almost like someone was whispering, but there was no one there. I froze, glancing around. The sound came again, but this time it was clearer, like a voice, but not quite right. I turned around, expecting to see someone just standing there, but the hallway was empty. There was no one. I didn't know why, but something told me to go back to the booth, so I did. I brushed off the incident as my imagination getting the best of me. I returned to the table, but as I sat down, I noticed something strange. The old man wasn't at the bar anymore. I glanced around, thinking maybe he'd gotten up and left, but no. His seat was empty, and no one had seen him leave. The bartender didn't seem to have noticed, though. She was busy with another order, and the people around didn't seem bothered. It felt like everyone had forgotten about him, except for me. "Where did he go?" I muttered under my breath. Matt and the others didn't seem to care. "What are you talking about?" "The old guy?" Matt replied. "I don't know, maybe he left." But I wasn't so sure. It was strange that no one seemed to acknowledge it, like the old man had simply vanished. I glanced at the clock. Only 20 minutes had passed since I'd gone to the bathroom. There was no way he'd left that quickly. And then, something even stranger happened. A few minutes later, the old man was back. But it wasn't the same. He wasn't sitting in his usual spot at the bar. He was standing by the window, staring out into the street. I couldn't see his reflection in the glass, though. The window was dark, but I should have been able to see him there. I blinked, and when I looked again, the window reflected no one. There was only the streetlights and empty sidewalks. I felt my heart race. It was like the man had disappeared entirely, but I had seen him standing there, not 2 seconds ago. I didn't want to say anything to the group. I wasn't sure what I had seen, but it felt wrong. I felt unsettled, like something in the air had shifted. The longer I stayed in that bar, the more the air around me felt thick, like I couldn't breathe properly. It felt as though time had slowed, and everything seemed just a bit unreal. I tried to shake it off, but I couldn't. My friends continued chatting, oblivious to the fact that something strange had just happened. The rest of the night was a blur. We drank, we laughed, and eventually, we all left the bar, heading out into the cold night. But here's the thing that's haunted me since that night. As we were walking away from the bar, I happened to glance over my shoulder, and I saw the old man standing in the doorway. His back was to me, but I could still see his silhouette. His shoulders were hunched, and he just stood there, staring into the night. I never saw him again after that night. I don't know if he was real or if something else was going on, but I'll never forget how it felt, like I was being watched by someone, who wasn't really there. Some nights, when I'm out walking or sitting alone in a bar, I still feel like someone is watching me, even though there's no one around. It's a feeling I can't explain. Maybe it's just my mind playing tricks on me. Or maybe that old man was something else. Story 2. My name is Jorge. This happened a few months ago, and I still get the chills when I think about it. It was on a Friday evening, and I had just moved to a new neighborhood. It was one of those quiet, almost too perfect places, with tree-lined streets and cozy little shops that seemed straight out of a postcard. I had been feeling a little disconnected after the move, so I decided to visit a bar nearby to unwind. The place wasn't much, an old pub, probably a few decades old, with a few dark wooden tables and a long bar counter that had seen better days. The lighting was dim, casting soft shadows over everything. It was the kind of place where the air smelled of old wood and faintly of whiskey, where you could hear the hum of soft conversations and clinking glasses, but it was never too loud or overwhelming. I remember it being a slow night, maybe just 5 or 6 people scattered around. Most of them were talking quietly to each other, not too engaged with the outside world. I ordered a beer and found a seat at the far end of the bar, where I could keep to myself. The bartender, a guy named Chris, greeted me with a nod. He didn't say much, but his smile was friendly enough. As I sipped my drink, I noticed something odd. There was a man sitting in the corner booth by the window. He was alone, just staring out at the street. I could see his reflection in the glass, but his face looked strange. Almost blurry, like it wasn't entirely clear, even though the lighting outside was sharp and crisp. I tried to ignore it, figuring it was just the lighting playing tricks on me, but every time I glanced over, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right about him. After about 20 minutes, the man stood up suddenly. He wasn't in a hurry, just kind of slowly stretching his legs. But when he did, his movement was unnatural, almost stiff, as though he wasn't used to walking. He turned toward the door, and I expected him to leave, but instead, he started walking in my direction. It was as if he wasn't aware of anyone else in the room. His eyes remained fixed straight ahead, never looking at anyone. I tried not to stare, but I couldn't help it. There was something about him that pulled my attention. He passed by me, too close for comfort, and I could feel a cold draft around him. But here's the thing, when he got close, I could see that his feet weren't touching the ground properly. It was like he was gliding just above the floor, his shoes barely making contact. I looked down to make sure I wasn't imagining things, but when I looked up, the man was gone. There was no sign of him at all. He didn't leave the bar, it was as though he had vanished into thin air. I sat there, staring at the spot where he had been, trying to process what I had just seen. My heart was racing. I tried to make sense of it, but nothing fit. No footsteps, no sound of him walking out the door. Just gone. I looked around the bar, and everyone seemed oblivious to what had just happened. No one else had noticed. I turned to Chris, the bartender, but he was busy with another customer. The whole place felt oddly still, like time had paused for a moment. I finished my drink quickly, trying to shake off the unease settling over me. I didn't want to seem paranoid, but I had to get out of there. As I stood up to leave, I caught one last glance at the window. The man wasn't there anymore, but now, looking through the glass, I could see something else, a shadow moving across the street. It was moving too quickly, almost too fast for the eyes to follow. I didn't look back as I walked out of the bar. I couldn't. To this day, I can't explain what happened that night. Maybe it was my mind playing tricks on me, or maybe there was something else in that bar. I still go back to that place sometimes, but every time I pass by that window, I feel the same chill run down my spine. That man, or whatever he was, never came back. But I can't shake the feeling that he's still out there, watching. If you've made it this far, thank you for joining us for another episode of Lord of Limbo. What would you do if you experienced something like this? Have you ever had a frightening encounter? Share it in the comments, because the unknown might be closer than we think. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more dark stories. We'll see you in the next video, if you're still here.